Crime and Punishment is a novel by the Russian author Fyodor Dostoyevsky, first published in 1866. It is considered one of the greatest works of Russian literature and a masterpiece of psychological realism. The novel explores the themes of guilt, redemption, and the consequences of human actions. The story is set in St. Petersburg, Russia, in the 1860s, and follows the life of Rodion Raskolnikov, a poor ex-student who is struggling to make ends meet. Raskolnikov is an intelligent but troubled young man who becomes obsessed with the idea that some people are extraordinary and therefore above the law. He begins to believe that if he were to commit a murder, it would be justified if it served a higher purpose. The novel opens with Raskolnikov wandering through the city, tormented by his thoughts. He is deeply in debt and has pawned most of his possessions to survive. He decides to visit an old pawnbroker, Alyona Ivanovna, who he believes is a cold-hearted and greedy woman who deserves to die. Raskolnikov plans to rob her and then kill her if necessary. On the day of the murder, Raskolnikov enters the pawnbroker's apartment and strikes her with an axe, killing her instantly. He also kills her half-sister, Lizaveta, who happens to come into the apartment at the wrong time. Raskolnikov manages to escape with a few valuables and hides them in a nearby courtyard. After the murder, Raskolnikov becomes increasingly paranoid and anxious. He is haunted by his guilt and fears that he will be caught. He is also tormented by the fact that he has killed an innocent person, Lizaveta, who he had not intended to harm. As the novel progresses, Raskolnikov becomes involved with several other characters who play important roles in his redemption. These include Sonia, a young prostitute who is also struggling to survive, and Porfiry Petrovich, the shrewd and determined detective who is investigating the murders. Sonia is a central figure in Raskolnikov's life, and he comes to see her as a symbol of purity and innocence. He confesses his crime to her and asks for her forgiveness. Sonia, who has a strong faith in God, urges Raskolnikov to confess to the police and to seek redemption for his actions. Porfiry Petrovich is a skilled detective who is determined to catch the murderer. He begins to suspect Raskolnikov and engages him in a series of conversations in which he tries to expose his guilt. Porfiry uses his psychological insight to manipulate Raskolnikov and to make him doubt his own innocence. As the novel approaches its climax, Raskolnikov becomes increasingly agitated and confused. He is tormented by his guilt and fears that he will be caught. He eventually confesses to the murders and is sentenced to 8 years of hard labor in Siberia. In the final chapters of the novel, Raskolnikov begins his journey of redemption. He is sent to a prison camp in Siberia, where he is forced to confront the consequences of his actions. He becomes ill and is cared for by Sonia, who has followed him to Siberia. Sonia becomes a source of strength and support for Raskolnikov, and he begins to see her as his salvation. In the end, Raskolnikov is redeemed through his suffering and his love for Sonia. He realizes that he is not an extraordinary person but a flawed and imperfect human being who is capable of committing